understand it, we look at the original Act and the Amendment Act. And we're not going to go too long with the chat because it's something that can actually be broken down in a few easy steps to help you ensure that you protect yourself and protect your clients. So I always like to say where it came from. So there was a guy called Al Capone in America, and he was running alcohol, he running guns. If anybody tried to go and snitch on him, they would find themselves at the bottom of a river with lead boots on or concrete boots, and they would disappear. And the cops tried to get him arrested multiple times, but the witnesses all disappeared or they were too scared to come forward. Then there was one clever cop that said, you know, he's got all these houses and cars and he's so rich, but he's not paying tax. And they eventually got him on tax fraud. And basically his empire collapsed. He went to jail for quite a few years, and when he came out, he was not the Al Capone of the old days. So what happened from there? You had all these other bad guys, and they realized that they were getting all this money, but they had to prove that it was clean money and pay the tax on it. Otherwise, the government would just come and grab all their stuff and chuck them in jail. So what they decided to do was something called money laundering. Now, money laundering is basically a layering process. And it's very smart how they do it. So they'll pay money into, say, Dark Stupacy Robinson Incorporated and saying, I want to buy a property. I'm paying the money into your account. Just hold the money on for me. Then a month later, they say, no, I've got a death in the family. Please pay me back my money. And sometimes they'll say, even keep 5% of it for messing you around. Then they take their money and then they go through to Leapfrog. And they go and say they want to buy a property. And they get the money paid back to them, and they do it through 3-4 places. And by the end of it, it's gone from, say, drug money or some kind of illicit money to clean money. Then they've got the money, they pay their tax, and they can start buying properties and cars, and they don't have to worry about going to jail. And what basically happened is everybody started to realize South Africa had very weak laws regarding money laundering. So everybody from overseas started to come to South Africa and started to launder their money here. And it sounds great, all this money was coming into South Africa, but the problem with it is they brought a lot of crime with it. And the South African government said, okay, we need to stop this, but we can't do this on our own. We need the private sector to come and help us with stopping basically these money launderers, and they put a responsibility on the private sector. And basically, under the Act, attorneys as well as property petitioners fall under the Act, and we have a FIC reporting duty, and we started off with the FIC Act. Now, the FIC Act was basically quite basic. It was get to know your client. So you would get a client, and at some stage you would go and you would ask them for their ID, residential address, proof of residential address, and we would get to know our client. Then we had to keep an eye out for suspicious transactions, and suspicious transactions were if an amount was over 25,000 Rand in cash, then you had to report it. Just remember, and it's something to always remember, because a lot of us forget, they don't have to arrive with a suitcase of 25,000 Rand in cash on the old Act. They just had to go and take the cash to the bank. The bank would take in the cash, and it would be considered a cash transaction, and you had to report them. And just for interest sakes, now the cash threshold's gone up to 50,000 Rand, or 1 Rand short of 50,000 Rand, but the old Act was 25,000 Rand. And you had to report it. What other suspicious transactions you had to keep an eye out for, and you still got to keep an eye out for, is that you have to report suspicious transactions in terms of the old Act and in terms of the amendment. And basically, an example of one would be if somebody says, I want to buy 3 properties. I don't want to even look at the properties. You go and choose me 3 properties and I'll buy them. Why? Because he's taking his dirty money, he's buying properties, he's going to sell it shortly thereafter, and it's gone through one layering of money laundering. And it would be suspicious that somebody doesn't want to at least look at the properties without them checking it out first. It might be slightly different if you have an investor and he trusts you and he asks you to do it. But if it's somebody that calls you out of the blue, why would they trust you to buy that? Okay. So we've got a scenario then. We had to report suspicious transactions. And everybody used to be worried at that stage. They used to say to me, Garth, I don't want to report my client. He's going to get angry with me. The reporting was anonymous, and he would do it behind the scenes as it is today. And basically what would happen is that the government would look into it. Only if it was illegal would they come and arrest the person. So 99% of the reporting was done, and nothing ever happened because it wasn't illegal and the client was no wiser to it. And the 1% that it did happen, you were dealing with a dodgy person anyway. So it's probably better that he was caught and you're not dealing with him, because you could have ended up at the bottom of an ocean with some concrete boots on it. So that was the basis of the FICA Act, and it was very easy. And the honest truth is pretty much no one really reported anything. They might have done the cash threshold, but there was nothing really done from the attorney's side, from the estate agent side. We kind of maybe reported a transaction now and again, and the government said, okay, this is not working. We need to amend the Act. So how did they amend the Act? They brought in the FICA Amendment Act on the 2nd of May 2017, and that's the one in front of you now. You'll see in the first page, it talks about an RMCP. Now, an RMCP is basically a guideline that your principals and directors of the company will provide to you. An RMCP is, if you don't know what to do with FICA, you go to the RMCP and report, and you act in accordance with the RMCP. And every agency has to have one. Quite a few of the agencies were caught without an RMCP, and they were fined heavily. So principals, if you don't have one, please contact me. Let's get you an RMCP up and running as quickly as possible, and we'll tailor make it for you so that you've got that. And that's the first thing they ask a principal for, is the RMCP. I'm not going to go into too much detail with that because I'm mostly speaking to the property petitioners, and if the principals need any help with the RMCP, then they can contact me. But we're going to go look at what are your responsibilities now in terms of the Amendment Act, which is halfway down. So you'll see Section 20 Big A has been inserted, which provides the accountable institution may not enter into a transaction with an anonymous client or a client with a false or fictitious name. Okay, so what does that apply to you? Number one, you are an accountable institution in terms of the Act. But now they're basically saying is that you cannot enter into a relationship with a client until you FICA them. The old days, you would get a client and then you would ask them for their FICA, and that was fine. Now you can't do that. Now you actually have to FICA them first before you enter into a relationship with a client. So don't go and sign an offer to purchase and then start asking the client for the FICA documents. If the FICA agency arrives and they say, give me your OTP, and you look at OTP and they say, where's your FICA? And you say, well, I've asked them and I was waiting for it, they're going to fine you. They're going to say you shouldn't have even entered into a relationship, which is entering into an offer to purchase. So it's very, very important that you do it before you enter into a relationship from that side. For a seller, what does that mean for you? That's at mandate stage. So don't even have a mandate without having the seller's FICA documents. So for the purchasers, when they enter the offer to purchase, for the sellers, when you get the mandate. If you have a file open, you have a signed mandate or OTP, please have your FICA documents with it. The FICA agency arrives often at the estate agent's doors. They say, open up, show me your files, and you can get into huge trouble if you don't have it. Okay, so that's the first one. Next one is Section 21 is amended such that when an accountable institution engage with a prospective client, they have to FICA them, in short. So what does that mean, a prospective client? So now it's not only a client, it's a prospective client. Now, initially, some of the attorneys came out and said, if you have an open day, then that's a prospective client. And therefore, you need to FICA everybody that comes and views on your open day. Obviously, all the property petitioners said, listen, we'll scare away everybody if we have to FICA everybody has to come in. And I don't think that the FICA agency would go and push it that far. And they haven't confirmed ever that they need it at that stage. But for an example where a prospective client can come into being, if a purchaser is asking you to show him or her various properties and you've driven them around time after time after time, I think that has become a prospective client, and then you can FICA them. It actually works out very nicely because I always say to people, don't waste your time on bad money. And if somebody's asking you to drive them to various places and you haven't obtained how much they earn and what they qualify for, you might be wasting your time. So it's a very nice time to say, stop. You're a prospective client. I need to FICA you. And then while I'm FICAing you, let's just go get a pre-approval from the bank. So give me your documents so that you can see how much they qualify for. And then you are able to FICA them at that stage as well. If a client gets funny with you, which sometimes they do, and say, why must I be FICA'd? I don't want to give you my FICA documents. You can say to them, don't be angry with me, be angry with the law. If I don't do it and FICA RAS, which I often do, they're going to immediately fine me, but they're going to look into you very quickly why you don't want to be FICA'd. And they'll do a big investigation. So let's protect us both and let's get the FICA done. Okay. The next one is Section 21 Big A. And basically that is a very important one that most property petitioners are forgetting to do. And basically what you have to do with that one, we can read it, 21 Big A provides that in addition to the information required to be obtained in terms of Section 21, let's get to know your client, and the RMCP, which your principal will provide you, the institution must obtain information to enable the accountable institution to determine whether future transactions that will be performed in the course of the business relationship concerned are consistent with the institution's knowledge of the prospective client, including, and this is the important part, the nature of the business relationship concerned, the intended purpose of the business relationship concerned, and the source of the funds. And this is the very big one where we all mess up. We don't get the source of funds. So you'll have a questionnaire which the client must sign, and I like to use the exact wordings. The nature of the business relationship concerned is a property-related nature. The intended purpose, if it's a seller, it's to sell the property. If it's a purchaser, it's to buy the property. And then the source of funds. If it is cash, then they have to say where that cash comes from. They can't just say cash. They have to say cash, which my granny gave me, or cash that I've earned that's in my account. So they have to say not only cash, but where does that cash come from and where it's being held at the moment. So it's very important that they fill that out in detail. And sometimes we all miss doing that one. It's very, very important to do that. Okay, if we go to the next slide. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. Okay, if you look at Section 21 Big B, it sets up an additional due diligence to measures to be formed with institutions when you're dealing with, and this is the highlight here, legal persons, trusts, and partnerships. A legal person, company or CC, a trust, a trust, and a partnership. So that can be two individual persons that have formed a partnership. That's a business relationship. And when you have that scenario, you have an additional due diligence that you have to ask the nature of the client's business. So if the nature of the business is a fish and chip shop, then you can write there fish and chip shop, and then the ownership and control. So who owns the shares in the company? Because the directors and the shareholders can be different. So you have to ask who owns shares in the company and who are the directors of the company, for example. For a trust, who are the trustees and who are the beneficiaries of the trust. Very important that you do that with company, CCs, trusts, and remember partnerships. A lot of us forget partnerships because it looks like an individual. If they're in a partnership, they want an additional due diligence for the partnership. And your partnership will always have a partnership agreement, and they'll have what is the intended purpose of the partnership. Is it to buy property, run a law firm, or not really run a law firm, but you understand each one will have their reasons for the partnership, which you must put in as the nature of the client's business. Okay, the next one we're going to look at is in terms of Section 21 Big C. Institutions must conduct ongoing due diligence when they investigate investigations in respect of its business relationships with its clients, in monitoring the transaction source of funds, background and purpose of large and complex transactions, and keeping that information. So what does that mean? In the past, we could just do the FICA in the beginning, get to know your client, obtain the FICA, and we were done. And we could walk away, and we could maybe had to report somebody, and we didn't have to worry about it. Now FIC says, no, there's no such thing as that. You're doing it in the beginning, you're done. And this is very important for you to remember. You have to keep a continual eye on this relationship until the end of it. If things change, you have to then go through the process again and maybe report. So an example of this will be, you enter into an offer to purchase, you put in 100% bond to purchase the property for the purchaser. Purchaser only gets an 80% bond. And he says, okay, I'm going to put 20% cash, you're doing the addendum. If you forget to re-FICA the purchaser at that stage, you're liable for 15 years in jail or up to 10 million rand fine. Why? Because there's an ongoing due diligence. Once the addendum has been done and it is signed, then you have to re-FICA the purchaser, and then you would have to go through the process of saying, okay, the 20% is cash. Where is that cash coming from? And you have to fill out that document. And when I go and I do a lot of training is that I can say 90% of people are not going to do the ongoing due diligence. And when the FIC officer arrives, you'll say, give me the OTP, and you'll say, there's an addendum here, and I see that the payment structure has changed. Did you re-FICA the purchase at that stage? And you go, no, I did it at the beginning stage. And you'll say, that's a fine. And very, very important that we remember, you have to re-FICA an ongoing due diligence, and a very important one is if there is an addendum signed whereby how the purchase price is going to be paid. So please remember that one. Okay. The next one is Section 21 Big D. If an institution doubts the adequacy of information previously obtained, it must repeat the steps of 21 Big A and 21 Big B. So at any stage you feel that you haven't got enough information, or something's changed, or you're uncertain, you have to re-FICA. If somebody is also connected with the ongoing due diligence, for example, if a director changes, the director dies, a new director comes in, if a trustee is removed, all these things is that it's ongoing due diligence, and if you're uncertain and you feel that there's not enough information, re-FICA. Very, very important. It's another one that we always forget, is that you have a transaction, you'll get the trust deed, and you'll see the trust says there has to be 3 trustees, and you FICA'd the trust already, but then there was only 2 trustees at that time, and then the 3rd trustee is appointed quickly so we can get the deal through, and we don't re-FICA the trust, and we don't FICA the new trustee. We haven't done our job. We get a fine. And that's a big one that we all miss. So change of how it's paid, and change of trustees, change of directors, all those things we have to re-FICA the company, and we have to re-FICA the new person that's coming in. Very, very important. Please remember that. The next one is Section 21 Big E. If the institution is unable to establish or vary a client's identity or conduct on the ongoing due diligence, so you've already got you FICA the person, you've got the FICA, so you're allowed to start a relationship, but as you're doing your ongoing due diligence, something changes, and now you have to re-FICA them, and they don't want to re-FICA, then you can't carry on with the relationship. You actually have to stop and say, I cannot continue with you, and if they continue, don't want to provide the stuff, you have to report them. So it's very, very important that we continue to re-FICA, and if they don't want to provide it to us, and they say, why must I redo it? You say, unfortunately, it's changed, we have to re-FICA, and if they don't want to do it, we have to stop that relationship. You can't say we did in the beginning, so we're done. Okay. Then Section 21 Big F and 21 Big D, G, deals with the manner in which foreign prominent officials and domestic prominent officials have to be reported. So it's very interesting. So you've got a foreign national, you've got somebody who's very famous that's in the political sphere. It's not simply FICA them. You have to do different things, and your RMCP will let you know. And it's very important that you do that. I mean, you have to Google these people, see if they're connected with any notorious people, and there's additional elements that you have to do. And your RMCP must have that inside there, and you have to follow your RMCP. So please remember, especially politicians, you see a politician, light bulb go in your head, I can't just do the normal FICA. I have to do more than what I would do with a normal person on the street. Okay. Section 22 and Section 22A deals with record keeping. Your RMCP will have it inside there, but you have to keep your FICA documents. For you as the property petitioner, what I'm going to recommend, every person that you have, you FICA them. I'd have a file. I'd have a file for the purchase and seller for the transaction, and I'd keep my FICA for them on the file, and then that eventually has to go into a storage facility and it has to be kept. You can't say that I FICA'd them and then come and ask for the FICA documents a year later and said, well, I destroyed them because it was done. You're going to get a fine. Very, very important we keep our records. So how do we make sure that we are protected? We look at the old act, which is not really the old act, but the original act and the amendment. We want to get to know our clients, and we've got additional things that we have to do now with the Amendment Act. We still have to report suspicious transactions. So things that you found that are suspicious, you must report it. It's usually done behind the scenes and nothing ever comes out. So rather report. If you're uncertain, rather report, because they'll look at it and they'll probably say, okay, there's no need to investigate this. You must report. If somebody comes with a bag of cash, over 49,999 Rand, and they give it to you, or they go and take it to the bank, then you have to report that. And then the additional elements of the amendment, with those additional documents where you ask, what is the nature of the business? What is the relationship? Where's the money coming from? Have those documents with you so that when you collect their IDs, you collect that. And then lastly, your ongoing due diligence. Don't think you've done in the beginning, you're done. It's an ongoing due diligence. If somebody stops giving you the information, you stop acting on their behalf. And if they carry on, you report them. If you remember those and you keep an eye on your RMCP, I believe that you guys will be covered and you'll avoid jail time and all fines. And if something really goes wrong, please give me a call, and we can. Obviously, prevention is better than cure. We can look what we need to do. If it's already too late and fix already there, give me a call anyway, and we can see if we can help out from that side. I appreciate you guys' time. It's the beginning of the year. Everyone's fresh and stuff, but FICA is not the most exciting topic in the world, but it's such an important one because, like I said, they are coming around. They're giving massive fines. Just so it's a little bit more in your face. It's the last thing I'm going to say about it. We had 3 police officers that arrived at our offices. They said that there was an illegal transaction, money laundering, that was done through our offices. And they said that if we hadn't reported, that one of the directors was going to get picked up that day. I was the only director at the offices, unfortunately, on that day, went and get the file, and I was just praying that everything was done. What had happened is that they were keeping it below the threshold at that stage, which was 25,000 Rand. So they were paying 23,000 Rand every second day, 23, until they got to the purchase price. That is obviously a suspicious transaction because they're trying to keep it under the mandatory reporting. And luckily, when I opened up the file, we had our FICA documents there. We had reported them and we were covered. They took our file and they went and arrested all the parties involved. So that is a real world circumstance that can happen. And even myself, I was having kittens that day. Okay, is there any questions that I can help anybody out with on the FICA side? It's a greatest pleasure, Jethro.
Thanks, Scott. Looks like, yeah, I know FICA is very serious. There was a big hoo-ha here in Cape Town about the attorneys that were involved in that. So, yeah.
100%, yeah. They really got caught, and that's at foreign nationals. If you're bringing money from, if the purchasers bringing money from overseas, especially Zimbabwe, there's a lot of, we've got a lot of Zimbabwe purchases at the moment. It's very important that your RMC covers you and you know what to do and you FIC the parties correctly, because those are the ones I think the Cape Town guys got really caught out on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them here, so yeah, it's a big red alert.
100%.
Super. Thank you so much, Garth. Thank you for your time, and we will see you again soon.